at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Bharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Bharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vaitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Mahabharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vaitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Mahabharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vaitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Mahabharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda as one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vaitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Mahabharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank. Vitasta has sustained civilizations. It has given birth to crafts and culture, a philosophy and poetry, to great kingdoms that remain its legacy today. Vitasta, the ever-flowing legacy of Kashmir. It flows on and on. Vitasta, now known as the river Jhelum, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir as it has done from time immemorial. A lifeline for its people, with boats, big and small, carrying trade and sustenance on its calm waters. In mythology, the Vitasta is worshipped as a manifestation of the goddess Parvati, consort of the great Lord Shiva, and it is Parvati who created the river at his special request. Mentioned in the Rig Veda As one of the 21 prominent rivers of India, the legend of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. The Nelamata Puran refers to Kashmir as Vaitastika, the land of the river Vitasta. In the Mahabharata it says, if anybody bathes in the waves of the river with vow and fasts for 7 days, he would become as pure as a hermit. This mystical space, carried forward by the indigenous Sufis or the Rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam, is manifested in the sacred architecture of Kashmir, in the shrines and the khankas along its bank.
Charm which has helped many spiritual seekers. It will take a full day to narrate very, very incredible stories, my personal experiences on the banks of river Vitasta, some saints, mystics, and many, many events associated with Vitasta. We have also today, in today's presentation, on yesterday also, we have discussed that the land nurtured by Vitasta has given spiritual fulfillment to great sages and saints, new name, anything, Abhinav Gupta, even Lalita Mukhopadhyay, around Vitasta only, they did great things, great achievements. And today my topic is Shavi Yogini Laleshwari, popularly called Lalla. She was born in present-day Pampur. You know, Pampur, you may be aware, which is very popular for saffron. Now, those who have read Shiv Puran, Lord Shiva says, whenever there is decline of dharma, whenever there is decline of dharma, I come in the human form to preserve the dharma, to eradicate ignorance. In fact, this is the basic thing in Bhagavad Gita also. Lord Shiva says, Yada Yadahi Dharmasya, you know, in second Adhyaya Bhagavad Gita. Even in Shaiva Agamas, when they say in beginning of Kal Yuga, all saints were hiding. They say Adharma got priority over Dharma. So the saints got scared to give the preachings, and they went into hiding. So Lord Shiva, being ever merciful, he assumed the form of Shrikantanatha and initiated sage Durvasa into Shaiva Agamas. That is how the lineage of Shaiva Agamas or Kashmir Shaivism started. So this is the history of Sanatan Dharma. Now coming back to Laleshwari, she had a vision. She had a vision. She had a vision of past, present, and future. She could see beyond times, right from the formation of Kashmir Valley, out of vast lake, a great expansion of water, surrounded all sides by mountains. Because this was also discussed today also, that Kashmir was a Satisar, surrounded by mountains. She had a vision. After this vision of the past, she could see the present, her times. She could narrate the woes and turbulence permeating her life and the society in general, because she mentions about the stark realities of life, how one has to go to the grinding of the stark realities of life. But surprisingly, she could remarkably visualize the future, which comprises of our present times. She has clearly brought out contradiction of the present age. In spite of it plenty, how people are still craving with mad zeal. Material advancement has led to internal despair. Although the world has become one village or family due to communication and networking, still we are fighting over narrow things like caste, creed, color. She was none other than Laleshwari, popularly called Lalda, as I mentioned. She was 14th century village girl turned into a mystic genius who reached supreme heights of sainthood. We are wonderstruck at her self-effort, stark worldly realities, self-transformation, and hope for every sincere aspirant to realize God within oneself and within this very life. That is very important. That's a very important message of Shaiva Agamas. In this very life, you can achieve something. Some call her Meera of Kashmir. Some Sufi saints have hailed her as second Rabia Basra. But essentially, she was torch-bearer of new spiritual movements which witnessed arrival of great saints like Guru Nanak, Mirabai, Kabir, Tukaram, and others. Her story, which is basically linked to her times, when in a Pandit house, she found she was lost within the facade of rituals. Moral degradation was in abundance and well represented by her stepmother-in-law. She would starve her. She would starve her meal, which consisted of big round stone covered with layer of rice, to give it a semblance of big helping of food. Now, Lalla will cook the food. She makes, you know how suffering one has to undergo. She, as a young bride, will cook the food. Then Madara will serve it. So she will keep it on her plate, a big round stone, surround it with, cover with a little rice. Go and take it. This is your food. What Lalla will do? Lalla would respond with patience and equanimity. She would wash this round stone and keep it in kitchen again for the next day used by her mother-in-law. She won't mind. She won't mind the suffering. What she witnessed, she said, "Arey, world is strange are the ways of the world." This is her sayings in her Vaks or Shlokas. She tells about her life. Because basically, I have done a lot of work. This my first passion has been Laleshwari. Every Vak I have studied from my childhood. And I'm grateful to one master, Brahmachari Udayanath Tikku. We did a lot of research type on each sayings. Then we made a cassette and distributed all over the world. And then, of course, we did a Bali, Param Ishavi Yogini Laleshwari in Kavani Auditorium. Then secondly, Sonal Mansingh also collaborated with me. Sir Bharat Gupta ji also was there. We did a ballet also, a nurse ballet in Delhi. So this has been my main activity. My main sadhana is Laleshwari. So she says, "Oh, funny are the ways of the world, strange are the ways of the world." She witnessed wise and learned man starving, withering like leaves emaciated during winter wind. On the other hand, she saw a fool enjoying full meal and then beating his cook. Pointing to minor shortcomings, Lalla said she is waiting for deliverance from this odd ways and bondage of the world. She says, "Oh, you know, a wise man is starving. A foolish person is enjoying in this world." So, you know, she says that a wise man withering, luck has not support him. A fool enjoying the meal, then he's beating the cook, or the salt was more or less, something like that. You know, this is a practical way of grinding, how she sees the contradictions in life. But we have to face with equanimity. There's a suffering and perseverance. Faced with total equanimity, one is deeply moved by her sadhana or tapasya. She was both external and internal. Then what she realized is, "Oh, my life is getting wasted." She found life was getting wasted and one was only groping in the dark. Even Guru's instructions seemed too difficult for her to follow. She reveals her agony, but emphasizes one has to bear with calamities and thunder in this spiritual sadhana. The real guidance is patience, contentment, and forbearance. Thus one gets refined and one can tread the spiritual path in real terms. Everything she tolerates, that this is a part of spiritual sadhana. This difficult is a part of sadhana. Then what happens? Now she leaves the home. It's a wonderful story. She relinquished her home and became a wandering monk. It is said people flanked her as her supernatural powers got revealed. Guru's dictum was clear. It is time to leave home. No look back. So there's a wonderful way, a wonderful saying, because everything, life she has revealed through her sayings, poetic sayings. So she says, "Goran dopnam kuni vachun, nebra dopnam andar asun, andar nebrai kuni machun, tavai lal mego, yuhai lal mego vakt vachun." It is a beautiful Hindi translation. "बस एक बात मेरे गुरुवर मुझसे बोले, तू बाहर कहाँ भटकती भीतर होले, आदेश बने ये शब्द मेरे, ये प्रेरणा मेरे, तब से मैं नाची नग्न मग्न पटक होले." Since cruel mother-in-law failed to dislodge her from the spiritual path, because she was tolerating everything. What to do? Mother-in-law was bent upon torturing her, stepmother-in-law. So she poisoned her son with false accusations against her. One day she was returning after filling the earthen pitcher with water. Her husband accosted her and hurled accusation. You know, she's where you had gone. He abused her. She kept quiet, but then in rage, he hit the pitcher. A miracle happened. The water remained intact, although the broken earthen pieces of the pitcher fell down and got scattered on the ground. Actually, that is still, there's a called Lalatra. It is a still a small pond near Pampur. They said that water remained intact and the pitcher got broken. They said that right now it is still not in a very good condition because of the Sanduk. These things, we are not able to maintain it, but it is still, it can be seen, it is there in Pampur. In fact, everything she has mentioned, we know is through her vaks or shalukas, what we call it, sayings. Her miracle had a message behind. Many miracles are attributed to her life, but what is important and remarkable is that each incident had a message which was relevant at that time and which is equally relevant for the present time. We have heard about various inspiring incidents and messages. She tells the story of her previous births, the miracle of Chandrakala. She also makes her guru aware of his obsession with Maya as he was counting his assets in the form of horses deployed when he appeared sitting in the meditation. Because she went to her guru's house, and in the ground floor she met Guru Ma was there. They said, where is Guru? They say, Guru is doing the sadhana. He's upstairs doing sadhana. He said, is he doing sadhana? Or he's counting the horses? Actually, he had deployed some horses. He said, my mule should be employed, something. He had a business in his mind, Guru. Then she said, oh, very bad. She's talking, disregarding his Guru. She didn't say anything. Then Guru came down. He said, oh, Lalla had come. He said, very bad. She was disregard for you. What is this? What she had said? I told her, you are meditating. She said, you are counting the horses. Exactly, I was doing the same thing. Whatever she said. Basically, that is biography, which should come above on everything. She made, there are a lot of miracles she did. She made the famous Nundarishi, that Sheikh Nuruddin we are discussing today, that he was a mystic guru in Kashmir. She made Nundarishi aware that as an infant, her mother brought him to Laldat, saying the baby is not sucking milk. When are you not shy of coming in this world? Why feel shy of sucking milk? Soon he followed her instructions. That was this thing. In fact, as I always say, Laleshwari gives the essence of Kashmir Shaivism. What attracted me to mystic of Kashmir Shaivism is because of Laleshwari. For years and years, as a sadhana, I was reading her shlokas. And she says, one shlok which clearly represents Kashmir Shaivism. She says, Shuchi Zavil Zal Vaharavit Krazan Manchai Tarit Kat Zindanai Vuchan Adikati Marit Yani means Pankad Vazit Shaikat, meaning Shu Failai Suksham Jal Are Swayam hi Gat Vasi hai. अरे जीवन में ही तुम पहचानो, मर के क्या पहचानोगे, चिंतन से तुम गहन मनन से बात तत्व की जान लो, खुद को खुद से अलग करो, क्या नश्वर है अविनाशी है, शू फैलाए सूक्ष्म जाल. Now, the present chaos in our world has almost reached a flashpoint. We see only disharmony, discord, and dispute which can sow the seed of disaster. Here is a great yearning for a savior. Laleshwari's life and teaching can uplift us, infuse in us the spirit of patience, love, contentment, steadfastness, unity, spiritual thrill, simple ways to reach self-discovery, all ultimately leading to upliftment at individual, family, nation, and world as a whole. If we really follow Laleshwari, I will tell you, it is a great guidance in a very simple language for our spiritual sadhana. As my friends are aware, I always focus on teaching of Shaiva Agamas in a very simple possible way, so that people can lead a holistic life. Here I take guidance from the wonderful messages revealed in her Vaks of Laleshwari. basically for the first weight of sadhana, how to go in the spiritual path, I always take guidance of Laleshwari. Kindly, if you can remember this, she says, essentially Shaiva Agamas is a divine grace, it's the principle of Shakti path. Please focus on these three first qualities. Let humility, love and compassion should be your nature. Please be humble. I will tell you, your life will be much more successful. Let love should be your nature because you are a part of divine. Everybody is a part of divine. So you must love each other. Let compassion should be our nature. Compassion will give us greatest happiness. Our Shavi Acharya Swami Lakshmanji, he used to mention the greatness of compassion. He says his teacher was Maheshana Rajan. His father, he was elderly couple, they were sleeping. A thief came into their bedroom. Now thief was looking at shuffling the books, some money or something he will get. He had nothing. He was a simple, only knowledge, he had no money. Then when he saw a thief struggling, his eyes opened. He said, "Oh, my dear, your hands have got tired, your fingers are worn out. Oh, very sorry, don't worry. I have some 1 rupee in my pocket. I will share that with you." He fell at his feet. He said, "Sir, I got God. I'll be a servant for the rest of my life." That is a greatness of compassion. Because they are very important things. They are the first requirements to tread on a spiritual path. And secondly, inspire Laleshwari, the second guidance is, please have, as I mentioned, that divine light is shining within you. Please have 100% faith in you. If you don't have faith in yourself, you won't have faith on others. If God is within you, you must have 100% faith in yourself. And second thing, because everything is, divinity is within you. For that, you need to have self-faith, and whatever comes within you, that is a permanent guidance. Secondly, you must love yourself, love your inner child, because you are the part of divine. So, take care of your body. Don't ignore yourself. That is also very important. And third thing is that have faith in Lord Shiva for the future. What will happen next moment, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, everything will be good. If you do every work in the name of Lord Shiva, please know every success is there, everything will be positive. Even if there are impediments, there are badhas, impediments, that also will be taken care of by Lord Shiva. We call it wheeling and revealing energy of Lord Shiva. There will be more impediments that also will be taken care of by Lord Shiva. There's a very nice dialogue. They say, "Hum murkh jo kaam bigade, Ramo kaj banaye re." We can only make mess if we leave it ourselves. But God will take care of our everything. So that's also very important. And second thing is, I all need blessing of you, because I am very keen. Kashmir to Madras, we want to work on a project called Tamil Shaivism and Shaiva Agamas, connecting to roots. Because there is a missed call from one young lady from Sri Lanka. She's also a scholar of, she's Shaiva Siddhanta scholar. She's a missed call, I will talk to her. So may Lord Shiva bless you. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity. Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you so much, Kaziji. This session seemed like a beautiful continuation from Rajneeshji's previous session. And as he said, Laleshwari seems to be the perfect embodiment of Shastra and Sadhana. As he spoke of Laleshwari being an ardent devotee displaying bhakti, we saw that bhakti in you, sir, when you were speaking out her vaks. We saw that bhakti, that benevolence and love in you. Thank you so much for bringing this beautiful saint to us. Thank you so much, Kaziji. We shall move on to the next talk. I request Kalakshetra Director, Srimati Revati Ramachandran, to please come to the dais. I request our next speaker, Shri P.R. Kannanji, to please adorn the dais. Namaskaram, sir. I request our director, Srimati Revati Ramachandranji, to please honor and felicitate Shri P.R. Kannan. Yes. A multifaceted personality, Shri P.R. Kannan is a genius IITian. Having worked in many reputed organizations in India and abroad, Shri P.R. Kannan has a very keen interest in Sanatana Dharma. His spiritual journey took bigger turns at the instance of Shri Mahaswamiji of Kanchi. He's the author of over 40 books and editor of spiritual magazines. Shri Kannanji is sought after for delivering discourses on various religious topics. We are very, very proud and happy to have him in our midst today. P.R. Kannan sir will now enlighten us with this classic of Sanskrit narrative poetry, Kalhana's Raja Tarangini. Over to you, sir.
Check. Namaskar to everybody. At the outset, I would wish to congratulate Ministry of Culture and Kalakshetra Foundation for organizing this splendid festival, Vitasta festival, over a 4-day period. I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks for giving me an opportunity to say a few words on the classical Raja Tarangini today. My association with Raja Tarangini started in August 2021 only, when Shankaracharya of Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham, as you know, Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham has been having a very close relationship with Kashmir. Every year, the Matham has been sending Vaidikas to Srinagar to perform Vishwa Shanti Yajna, a 10-day festival during the Shankara Jayanti celebrations. They have lectures, they have bhajans, they have cultural programs, etc., havans, pujas, etc., etc. So, in view of this close association, our Shankaracharya thought of instituting a series of weekly lectures which started in August 2021 and still ongoing. More than 75 lectures have already happened. The first few lectures were delivered by me on Rajatarangini as instructed by the Acharya Swamiji. Rajatarangini, Neelamata Puranam and Bhringisha Samhita and Amaranatha Mahatmyam. These were the 4 subjects which I covered during that time. Now, Rajatarangini, as you might have known, is river of kings, Rajatarangini. It's a history of the kings of Kashmir, starting from Mahabharata times right up to 12th century. This Kalhana was a poet of the 12th century. His father was a minister. His name was Champaka in the ministry of, in the kingdom of Harsha. In the assembly of King Harsha, he was a minister. So he had access to a lot of palace documents, judicial records, and he personally took a lot of interest in visiting various monuments, etc., etc. That is how he wrote this Rajatarangini as a history of the kings of Kashmir. He has consulted a number of histories, something like 11 authentic histories he has consulted, but he was not at all happy with any of them because the presentation was, according to him, not up to the mark. He says so in his opening shlokas. This Rajatarangini has got something like 7,826 shlokas, divided into 8 tarangas, 8 chapters. And every chapter, every taranga, you will be surprised to know, starts with a prayer to Shiva, mainly Ardhanarishwara Shiva. And Kalhana is celebrated as the first author of a recognized Indian history. That is the greatness he has achieved. This chart here shows that there is more than one Rajatarangini. There are 3 more Rajataranginis which are shown there, which were followed by other poets after Kalhana. After 12th century, up to the Muslim rule, they have covered the other Rajatarangini, but we will not go into them. That's not very important for us. Our Kalhana's Rajatarangini gives an eye-catching glimpse of kings, palace intrigues, insurrections, conspiracies, plus the cultural history, the temples, the rivers, the springs, the mathas, the chaityas, the viharas, and the king's qualities, whether the king was virtuous or wicked, whether he had able ministers or he had useless ministers, and so on. And he breaks into a lot of shlokas on morals, on life's ethics, life's truisms, unseen causes and consequences. So many things he writes very beautifully, extraordinarily beautiful, epic poem, more than 7,000 verses. Now let's move on to, this is Sharda Peeth, the location which is in POK now, which is shown there. Let's move on to the next one, the Taranga 1. The Taranga 1 starts with a prayer to Shiva. Bhusha bhogi phanaratna rochihi sichaya charave nama pralina muktaya harakalpa mahiruhe. There it says, Shiva shines brilliantly with gems and serpents' hoods in his form, to whom liberated people pray and they merge in him, and who is like Kalpataru. Now, Shiva being described as Kalpataru is nothing unique, but it is unique in the context of Kashmir, because in Kashmir, there is a tradition of worshipping Shiva in the form of a log of wood. There is a story in Neelamata Purana that Shiva manifested himself as Kapateshwara, as a form of kapata to test the devotees. So there he appeared in the form of log of wood. So there is a special association with this. That is why Kalpataru has got a special association here. And the next shloka refers to Shiva as Ardhanarishwara. Now, there is a lot of beauty in the way he has constructed the shloka. He says, the left half of Shiva, in his ears he is wearing kundalas, the snakes, and the right half, left half, Parvati is wearing tatankas, and right half he is wearing snakes as kundalas. Similarly, left half, Parvati is wearing excellent blouse, right half he is wearing snakes, and so on. So this Ardhanarishwara form he is nicely presenting here. Then we go to the next one. I am going in a bit of a hurry because I want to cover as much of ground as possible. It's a very vast ground to be covered, and the time available is short. Now he says, the main rasa, though he is talking about, warfare, palace intrigue, insurrections, and so on, though a lot of space has been covered in the book for those activities, though, in spite of all that, he says, the main rasa which I want to convey is Shanti rasa. I want to convey Shanti rasa. Murdha abhisheka shantasya rasasyatra vicharyatam, he says. And then he starts with the history of Kashmir. For 6 manvantaras, now we are in 7th Vaivasvata manvantara now. For 6 manvantaras, Kashmir was under a sheet of water called Sati Saras. That means Parvati herself. Then Kashyapa came there. He prayed to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. All this is mentioned by Kalhana. He prayed to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. He made them come down to Kashmir. He made Vishnu break the mountains to drain the water so that the area will become dry. Once it has become dry, once Kashmir Mandala was created, he says so. In the water, there was a hidden Rakshasa called Jalodbhava. He got him killed by Vishnu. Kashyapena tadantastham ghatayatva Jalodbhavam. Nirmame tatsaro bhomo Kashmira iti mandalam. That is how Kashmir was created. Now, after that, you need water for life. So he prayed to Shiva. Shiva struck the ground with his Trishula. And out came from the Patala Parvati herself in the form of Vitasta river. That is why Vitasta is now being celebrated. The first river which emanated based on Shiva's striking of the ground with his Trishula. Udyad Vaitasta Rishyanda Dandakundata Patrina. This is how he describes Vitasta. That means when Nila was the king, Naga king, first it was occupied by Nagas. The Nila was the king. That is when Nilamata Purana came into being. Now, when Nila was the king, he had a kund, Nila kund. And this Vitasta was the river feeding that kund. So he says this is like a parasol, like an umbrella, for which the staff is Vitasta river. That is the imagination of the poet. Similarly, Gauri herself is Vitasta, he is explaining. Gauri yatra vitastatvam yatap yujjati nochitam. Now this he says in several shlokas in various contexts throughout the book. Then I mentioned about Shiva manifesting as log of wood, which he is also saying here. Bhukti mukti phala praptihi kashtaropam umapatim. Kashtaropam. Papasodana tirthantaha yatra samsprishatam bhavet. Then he says Saraswati is in the form of Hamsa, Hamsarupa Saraswati. Sandhya Devi is in form of water at the top of the hill. And there is a volcano, fire. And that fire is not ordinary volcano, it is Brahma. Brahma is receiving offerings in the form of Havis. That is Kalhana's description. Look at the Shastras, look at the Vedas, look at the way, religious way he is looking at everything. Nandikshetre haravasa prasade dichararpitaha adyapi atra vejjante puja chandana bindavaha. He says Nandikshetra is a very famous place in Kashmir, which is very often quoted in various books, including Rajatarangini. And he says Nandikshetra was a place frequented by Devas, and they were coming there for puja of Shiva. And the puja chandana bindus, drops, which were left by devas are still seen by me, by Kalhana, even today, he says, Adyapi, puja chandana bindavaha. Then he says, Alokya Sharadam Devim Yatra Samprapyate Kshanat Tarangini Madhumati Vani Cha Kavisevita. Then he describes Sharada Devi. He says, Sharada Devi is Saraswati Vani Cha Kavisevita. And there is a river called Madhumati, which is called Kishanganga. Why it is called Madhumati is described in another Nelamata Purana. Is the audio working? Then we go to the next slide. He says, Chakrabhut Vijayeshadi, Chakrabhrit Vijayeshadi Keshaveshana Bhushite, Tilam Shopina Yatrasti Prathivyas Tirthaihi Bahishkritaha. There is not a place occupied a sesame seed where there is no sacred place. Look at that. Tilam Shopi Na Yatra Asti Prithivyaha Tirthaihi Bahishkritaha. There is no place occupied even a sesame seed where there is no tirtha. Vijayate punyabalehi balayaryatuna shastrinam paralokat tato bhitihi yasmin nivasatam param. You cannot win over Kashmir by shastra bala, he says. By the force of weapons. You can win Kashmir only by punya bala. That is Rajatarayini's statement. Paraloka tato bhitihi yasmin nivasatam param. Because people are afraid of paraloka. Paraloka tato bhitihi. So they are following dharma. So those who follow dharma, how can you win them over without yourself following dharma? He is nicely putting that question. Then we have to go into a lot of history of kings. Before that, these are introductory passages. Now he starts with Mahabharata times. Before that, he talks about Kashmir's glory. He says, there is no place like Kashmir on the whole face of the earth. Summer is very cool. Surya is very kind. And in winter, you have hot baths. All this is described. Hot baths you have in winter. You have calm rivers. Rivers are very calm. Vidya Veshmani Tungani Kunkumam Sahimam Payaha. Drakshetu Yatra Samanyam Asti Tridiva Durlabham. Tridiva Durlabham. Even for devas, it is difficult to get. That kind of vidya, that kind of education, scholarship is available in Kashmir. That is what Kalhana says. Vidya Veshmani Tungani, high-rise buildings. Kunkumam, saffron, Sahimam Payaha, cold water, Draksha. All this is available in Kashmir. He is praising Kashmir a lot to begin with. Then he starts with Mahabharata times. During Krishna's time, there was a king called Gonanda the First. He was followed by his son Damodara the First. Now both of them died at the hands of Krishna because they were not following dharma. Then what happened was, this Damodara First's wife, who was pregnant at that time, was installed by Krishna, by Lord Krishna, as the ruler of Kashmir. A pregnant widow was installed as the ruler of Kashmir, and there was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of opposition. You know what Krishna said? He says that. Kashmira Parvati Tatra Raja Jneyaha Shivamshayaha Navajneyaha Sadushtopi Vidusha Bhuti Michhata. The entire area of Kashmir is Parvati, and the Raja there is Amsha of Shiva. So there is nothing wrong with her becoming the ruler. Then she gave birth to a son. That is how Gonanda the First, his dynasty started. Now when the child was born, Jata Karma and other kriyas were done. He is recording that. Tasya Rajyabhishekate Vidibhihi Sahasambritaha Dvijayendrehi Niravartyante Jata Karmadika Kriyaha. Dvijayendrehi, from the best of Brahmanas, he got Jata Karma, etc. done. Then we have some more kings following, like King Lava, King Kusha. Then we have King Khagendra, next king. Now, about Khagendra, he says, Harahasa site krityehi kritan lokan kramadyayav. That means he purchased Shivaloka by his meritorious deeds. Kritan Lokan, he purchased. That means his meritorious deeds were so great that he became eligible to go to Shivaloka with his own body. Now, not only about this king, about many other kings, Kalhana says with his own body he traveled to Shivaloka. People have seen that he is recording that. Then, after Khagendra, we have a king called Suvarna. Now, it is not just temples and mathas, it is also civil works, water works. Kashmir is famous for water works, even in those days. So he says this Suvarna established a canal called Suvarna Mani. First time he is mentioning a water works. Then comes Ashoka. Ashoka was a king who took to Buddhism, as we know. Kalhana elaborates on King Ashoka's Buddhist inclinations. He records that Ashoka built tall viharas touching the sky. And he established the town of Srinagar. Sashannavatya gehanam lakshayil lakshmi samujjalehi gariyatim purim shriyaman chakre Srinagarim nrapaha. 96 lakhs of houses he constructed, which are resplendent with prosperity. Lakshmi samujjalehi, that is what he says. Now, of course, there is an opinion of historians that the Srinagar built by Ashoka is not the one which we recognize as Srinagar today. That is a different view. Now, he also built Ashokeshwara temple. Not that he was averse to Hinduism. He built Ashokeshwara temple. And when Mlechas invaded the kingdom, by Mlechas, I think they mean Yavanas, Greeks. Now, when Mlechas invaded the kingdom, he wanted a son to follow him. And for that, he went to Bhuteshwara. He prayed to Bhuteshwara and got a son. Tapas santoshita lebhe bhuteshat sukriti sutam. And that son was Jalauka. His name was Jalauka. Jalauka was a great king. He expelled the Mlechas. He conquered vast regions. And the place where he expelled those Mlechas is known as Ujjata Dimba. He records that. He had a lot of siddhis. He could be under water for a long time. That kind of siddhi he had. He had a jnani guru, a guru who was a jnani. And in the case of governance of the state, he introduced new reforms. He introduced 7 functionaries of state. Dharmadhyaksho dhanadhyakshaha koshadhyakshaha chamupatihi duta purodha daivajnaha sapta prakritayo bhavanne. He established chief justice, superintendent of revenue, the treasurer, the chief of the army, the envoy, the purohita, the astrologer, 7 functionaries of state. Kalhana says a lot of things about King Jaloka, about his kingdom. He says he established what is known as Yudhishtirim Sthitihi. That means the kingdom of Yudhishthira. Kingdom of Yudhishthira of Mahabharata fame, he re-established. And he was so fascinated with Nandikshetra, he wanted a kshetra similar to Nandikshetra in Srinagar, which he called Jeshtarudra Kshetra. Jeshtarudra Kshetra he established. And he wanted the glory to be same as Nandikshetra. Now, Nandikshetra had a spring called Sodara. Now, he wanted the same spring here. There was no spring here. But he was so pious. You know what he did? He left an empty gold pitcher with a closed cover, mouth closed, in Sodara, that original Nandikshetra spring. After 2.5 days, that empty pitcher appeared in a spring here in Srinagar where he wanted. Same picture appeared here after 2.5 days. Then finally, you know how he went to Shivaloka. Patnya samam yayau raja sayujyam girijapatehe. Along with his wife, he went to Shivaloka, that is Jalauka. After that, he is followed by Damodara II. Damodara II created friendship with Shiva, like Kubera did. Kubera is known as friend of Shiva, as all of us know. So he established friendship with Kubera. He established friendship with Yakshas. I don't know how that was possible, but all this has happened in Kali Yuga. Haraprasada patrena Satcharitranu Babandha Sukhina Sakhyam Yena Vaishravana Swayam. Kubera himself became his friend. But Kalhana records with great sorrow, this he is saying frequently, that many good kings, many virtuous kings became evil kings in due course. I think that is the tyranny of power. That is the evil of power that he records. Now, unfortunately for this Damodara II, what happened was he became the subject of a curse by Brahmanas for no reason. He was not at all doing anything wrong, but Brahmanas became unnecessarily angry. And of course, that story is there. I will not go for want of time. That the Brahmanas cursed him to become a serpent. Then we have the king called Abhimanyu, a great king. He had a scholar called Chandracharya who taught Mahabhashyam. This Mahabhashyam comes frequently in Rajatarangini. Sanskrit grammar, Patanjali's Mahabhashyam, because Sanskrit was the language of the scholars and the grammar was decided by Mahabhashyam. So unless you are an expert in Patanjali's Mahabhashyam, you are not an expert in Sanskrit. That was the view, even today. So he got Chandracharya, who taught Mahabhashyam, who wrote Vyakarana books. But what happened was, during this time, during Ashoka's time onwards, Buddhists gained ground. So Buddhists started overrunning Sanatanis. So there was one Chandradeva, a Brahmana, who was encouraged by this king Abhimanyu. He performed penance, he performed tapas. He had a darshan of that Naga chief, Nila. That is how Nila Mata Purana came into being. That Nila taught all the rituals, all the Vedic rituals to this Chandradeva. And he re-established all the Vedic rituals. Then Gonanda the three, he was a very virtuous king. He re-established in full all the Vedic rituals. Gonandan Vayanam Adyaha Saraghunam Raguryatha. That is the example he gives. For Raghuvamsha, just as Raghu was the Adarsha king, similarly Gonanda was the Adarsha king for this lineage. Then Ravana, there was a king called Ravana. He established a Shiva Linga called Vateshwara Linga. Then we have Nara, also known as Kinnara. He committed a misdemeanor with a Naga woman. And the Nagas, who are the forerunners of Hindu, Brahmanas, etc., became so angry they destroyed the city and the king also perished. Then finally, when this warfare happened, when the Naga warfare with the Hindus happened, beautifully he is describing a shloka. I cannot pass this shloka. Madhu Kaidabhayor Medaha Pragurvorva Chakrinam Dagdhanam Praninam Tattat Tada Sarvangam Asprishat. That means there was an image of Vishnu in a temple, and because of the warfare, the fat, the blood reached the entire body of Vishnu image. Whereas during Madhu Kaitaba war, when Vishnu killed Madhu and Kaitaba on his thigh, the fat of Madhu and Kaitaba reached only up to his thigh, but this time it reached his entire body. That is the example he gives from Puranas. Then this was followed by King Sushravas. Sushravas was a Naga king. He made amends for all the warfare, etc. And how did he make amends? He established a beautiful lake, which is known as Sheshanag Lake today, on the way to Amarnath. Dugdhabdhi Davalam Tena Sarau Duragiro Kritam Amareshwara Yatrayam Janehi Adyapi Drishyate. Now finally he concludes with a moral, the story, because it started with the misdemeanor with a Naga woman, isn't it? He says, Sati Daivata Vipranam Apyekasya Prakopataha Shrutohi Prativrittantam Trailokasyapi Viplapaha. If you misbehave with a Pativrata woman, if you misbehave with a God's image, Daivata, if you misbehave with a Brahmana, with a Vipra, api ekasya prakopataha, even if one of them becomes angry, Srutoshi prativrittantam trailokyasyapi viplavaha, all the three worlds will become miserable because of the prakopa of that individual. That's what we have found. That is the lesson he draws. Now, there is one King Siddha who followed him. He also went to Shivaloka with his own body. Aururoha sadehoso lokan shashi shikhamanehe. For Shiva, look at the words he is using, several words. Shashi shikhamanehe. Then he was followed by King Mihirakula, a very violent king. He starts like that. Very violent king. He killed even women. Very surprisingly, he conducted a chastity test for women. You know what he did? There was one canal called Chandrakulya, and that was obstructed for some reason, some stones. So he said, these stones have to be removed. And he said, I have seen a dream in which only a chaste woman can remove that stone. So he asked all the women, nobody could remove the stone. He killed all the women. Look at that. He killed all the women on the basis of the chastity test. This is recorded by Kalhana. But as a penance, finally he realized his mistake. As a penance, you know what he did? He entered fire on a platform studded with swords. Studded with swords on a fire, that kind of platform. And there was Akashvani that he paid for his sins and he has been liberated. Now we go to Gopaditya. Gopaditya, next slide. Now, Gopaditya is described as a golden age, his reign. Jeshteshwaram pratishtapye Gopadra varya deshajaha Gopagrahan kritinayena svikarita dvijaha. He established Jeshtarudra temple, what is known as Shankaracharya Hill today in Srinagar. That was established. That is still known as Gopadri, even today. Gopadri Hill. He established that. He stopped animal slaughter, except for yajnas. Except for yajnas, he stopped animal slaughter. And he did a lot of good things. Then he was followed by Yudhishthira the first. Now he's making a beautiful remark about Yudhishthira. He says, a king should be a good king, no doubt. It does not mean that he should be like a yogi. King cannot be a yogi. He says that. Sarvatra samadrishtitvam gunoyam khalu yoginaha akirti hetusamahan doshastu prithvipatehe. Samadrishtitvam, samadarshana, having equanimity, is a virtue for a yogi, but not for a king. Because a king should know how to distinguish between good and evil. Because he didn't do that, he was killed. He met with his end. Then we go to Taranga 2. Taranga 1 is a very long one, very detailed history is recorded. We have rushed through it. Taranga 2, the first king, important king is Tunjina. Now he praises Tunjina and his queen. Dampatibhyam yamam tabhyam abhushyata vasundhara Ganga mriganka khandabhyam jatabhuriva dhurjatehe. Dhurjata is Shiva, as you know. Shiva is having Ganga and Chandra. So he says this king and the queen were like Ganga and Chandra. And there was a poet called Chandaka who was Vyasa's Amsha, who adorned his assembly. There was a severe famine suddenly in the kingdom. And the king was so desperately feeling miserable that he wanted to commit suicide because people are suffering. I am not able to do anything. Then his queen, she handled the famine. She said, if I let you go, the situation will be still worse. So I will handle it along with your help. And then she handled it successfully. This is nicely recorded by Kalhana. Then there was a king called Sandhiman, Sandhimat or Sandhiman. Very difficult to believe story. It is recorded by Kalhana. You know what happened? This Sandhiman had a lot of enemies. So before he became king, he was impaled. He was killed. He was put upon a pale. Once you are impaled, there is no question of your coming back to life. He became a skeleton. But his Shiva Bhakti was so great, yoginis came in the night and they gave life to that skeleton. Yoginis came in the night. This is seen by eyewitnesses and recorded by Kalhana. Yoginis came in the night to the Smashana. They gave life to the skeleton. They brought limbs by their own power and they created a new Sandhiman. That is how Sandhiman was created. That is why he is known as Sandhiman, because from skeleton he became a human being. Sandhi was created. But he became an extraordinary Shiva Bhakta king. Extraordinary Shiva Bhakta king. Tapasair bhasmaradrakshe jata jotankitair bhabhav tasya maheshwari parsha bhumipate sabha. His assembly was looking like a Kailasa, like Shiva's assembly. Tapasaihi bhasma rudraksha. Everybody was a tapasvi. Everybody was having bhasma and rudraksha. Everybody was having jata. Akarostha mahaharmyehi mahalingaihi mahavrishaihi mahatrishulaihi mahati mahamaheshwaro mahim. Everything is maha. Because Maheshwara, no? So everything is maha. He brought mahalingas. He brought mahaharmyas, means great temples. Mahavrishaihi, even Nandi, big Nandis. Mahatrishulaihi, all this he did. He was such a Shiva Bhakta. Swayam bhumishya tirthaishya potam bhakti visheshataha sayeva bhoktamajyasit pragyaha Kashmira Mandalam. Entire Kashmira Mandala became Shiva Mandala. Swayam bhumishya tirthaishya. Then we go to Taranga 3. Taranga 3, we start with King Meghavahana. There is a very interesting story about the king. You know what he did? He offered his own body as a sacrifice to Devi Chandi in order to save a boy. Otherwise, the boy was to be offered to Devi Chandi. He said, no, I will offer my body. And he was, of course, protected by Chandi. Chandi appeared in the night and he was protected. This is a real story recorded by Kalhana. Then Varuna appeared and protected him. And Varuna gave him a boon. That boon he used later on when he crossed the sea. You know, like Krishna was carried by his father and Yamuna gave way. Similarly, when he went on an expedition, the Samudra gave way because of Varuna's boon. Samudra gave way, parting of waters. Then, on another occasion, the same king offered his body to Durga Devi, because Durga was being given animal slaughter. He wanted to stop that animal slaughter. Same thing happened. Again, Durga protected him. Now, after that, there was a king called Matrugupta, very interesting king. Very interesting king. Kashmir became kingless, headless. Then you all know King Vikramaditya of Ujjain, very famous king. So the matter reached Vikramaditya. He deputed a king called Matrugupta. Matrugupta was an ordinary person. He was no claimant for kingship. He was no claimant at all. Suddenly, one fine morning, Vikramaditya chose him and sent him to Kashmir without even telling him that he is the new king. He sent a written message through him and without asking him to read what that message is. He went like a messenger, ordinary messenger. Then when he went there, the message was open. He was anointed as the king. And that Matrugupta was a gem. Mithyakhyata gudonapto namatyaha kalahapriyaha asatya sandastheyo va nasthanesta bahipatehe. There was no confidant the reputation of whose merit is misleading. No minister who delights in squabbles. That was the beauty of his kingdom. No member of council who does not fulfill his obligations at the court of the king. I mean, that is how he goes on. He stopped animal slaughter. He conducted many yajnas. He encouraged poetry in Sanskrit. He made the court poet Menta write Hayagriva Vadham. He also built a temple for Vishnu. Matrugupta Swami. When Matrugupta was appointed king, as usual, Kalhana breaks into a beautiful shloka. Now, I will not read the shloka for want of time. I'll just read the English translation. It says, looking for comfort and for relief from fear of Garuda, Shesha became bed for Vishnu. Shesha became bed for Vishnu because of fear of Garuda. Now, as he was able to bear hardships, Vishnu placed on him the unending and fatiguing burden of earth. Because he was able to bear hardship, Vishnu decided he should also bear the burden of earth. That is how he is holding the earth. That is how he says. That is how Matrugupta, though he was an ordinary person, he was found capable by King Vikramaditya and he was appointed king. Now, after that we are going to King Pravarasena, another great king who followed Matrugupta. Now, when he was constructing a temple, he was directed by Shiva to go to the village Sharitaka. Now, all of you might have heard of Sharika Parvata, Sharika Devi, very famous Shaktipetha in Kashmir today. Now, that's the same place. Now, also known as Hara Parvata. Now, he had darshan of Devi Sharika and Devi and Yaksha there, and he built the temple after that. He built a bridge across Vitasta. Vitasta is coming again for mention now. He built a bridge across Vitasta. On the left bank of Vitasta, he constructed a city called Pravarapura. 36 lakhs of houses, very rich and prosperous city he constructed. He brought ice water of Vitasta to houses. Ice water of Vitasta was brought to houses. And he was seen going to Kailasa with his own body, like many other kings. Aneneva sharirene bhejai bhutapate sabham. Then he was followed by a king called Ranaditya. The interesting thing about Ranaditya was his queen was Devi herself. Vindhyavasini Devi, Brahmaravasini Devi was his queen. Ranadityasya Gaunanda Vamshe Ramasya Raghave Lokantara Sukhasyapi Yoyo Amshabhuja Prajaha. Just as Rama was the jewel in Raghuvamsha, Ranaditya was the jewel in the Gaunanda Vamsha. That is how he says. Then we go to Taranga 4. It starts with Chandra Pida. Now, Pida means an ornament which you wear on the top of the crown, like a garland, you know. That is, all these kings are known as Pidas, that is why. Chandra Pida, he is also known as Vajraditya. Now, he had excellent record as a king. When he wanted land for constructing a temple, the land belonged to a shoemaker. And he sent his emissaries. The shoemaker refused to part with the land. He personally went to the shoemaker's house. Now, shoemaker finally gave the land, and you know, this is the shloka uttered by the shoemaker. Shavigrahena dharmena pandusono puro yatha dharmikatvam tatha tedye maya sprishyena vikshitam. Maya asprishyena vikshitam. I am asprisya. I am untouchable. I am untouchable. I am asprisya. I have seen now what a king can do. You are nobody other than Dharma. Because in the case of Dharmaraja, Yama tested Dharmaraja. He came in the form of a dog, Swargarohana Parva in Mahabharata. You might be familiar. So similarly, you have been tested now by me. That is what he says. Shavigrahena dharmena, in the form of a dog. He is quoting that. See how he is quoting from Puranas, Kalhana. Then we go to King Tarapida, the next king. Now, Tarapida's life was cut short, for which Kalhana blames Brahma. Beautiful shloka he says. He says, you are sitting on lotus, and lotus has no life. Very frigid lotus. So you have also become like the lotus, frigid. You don't know what you are doing, whether you are doing right or wrong. He is blaming Brahma for cutting short the king's life. Yoyam parapakaranaya srijatyupayam tenaiva tasya niyamena bhaved vinashaha dhumam prasauti nayanandhyakaram Yamagnihi bhutvam shamaye salilai stameva. You beautiful description of nature. He says, this King Tarapeda had killed his brother, King Chandrapeda, using sorcery. Similarly, when he troubled Brahmanas, the same Brahmanas killed this king also using the same sorcery. So he says, what you do to somebody else comes back to you. And for that he is giving an example. He says, fire gives birth to smoke, which blinds the eye. After becoming a cloud, the same smoke extinguishes the very fire by torrents of water. Fire creates smoke, smoke becomes cloud, it becomes water, and it extinguishes this fire. Beautiful example he gives. Now we go to next king, Lalitaditya Muktapida, a very famous king. All of you might have heard the name of Lalitaditya. Kashmir means one of the few kings associated with Kashmir is Lalitaditya. Na tatpuram na sagramo na sa sindhur na sornavaha na sadviposti atraso pratishthamne vinirmame. All negatives. He says, there was no city, there was no village, no river, no samudra, no island where this king did not establish a sacred structure. That is the tribute Kalhara gives him. He encouraged poets in his kingdom. He had great poets in his assembly, Vakpati, Rajashri, Bhavabhuti, etc. His reign extended right up to Karnataka in the south. He established many cities, names are given. And the most important thing, he established Martanda temple, the famous sun temple, which is now lying in ruins. Lalitaditya was the creator of Martanda temple. He constructed a beautiful compound wall for the Martanda temple. One of the beautiful things about this king, he had done charity when he was a very young boy, young prince, he had done charity. Now that charity was noted by Devendra for giving recompense to him in 100 ways. So what happened was, this is recorded by Kalhana, as a historical, it's not a hearsay or myth, it is a history. Now, after he became king, this Lalitaditya, he went somewhere where cherries are not available. No cherry can be found in that place. He says, bring me cherries. I don't know why he said, but somehow he said, bring me cherries. Next moment, a basket of cherries came. Then he realized this is a place where the cherry cannot be found. He asked him, who are you? How did you bring cherries? He said, I am a messenger of Devendra. I am a messenger of Devendra. These cherries are coming from Devaloka. Because you have done that charity last time, 100 times I have to do this. So if you ask for cherries again and again, you will lose all the 100 times. So don't ask for cherries, ask for something more important. That's what he said, that Devaduta. That is the beauty. He says, Patre prasanna chittasya kale danena tenate akhanditanam ajnanam shatamasi trivishtape shatam ajnanam. 100 such obligations are there for me to fulfill. Because you have done kale danena tenate. Any dana which is given in the right time, to the right person, in the right place, that is what he had done. Now, this Lalitaditya, he was taken to a desert treacherously by an enemy, and then he had a big army and there was no water. What to do? Now he came to know that he has been taken there treacherously. Then that is Lalitaditya's greatness, his power of punya. He struck the ground with his kunta, with his spear, and then out came Vitasta water. Like Vitasta, water came from the ground. And he is saying that. Ityuktva sombu nushkrashtum kunte norvim yadarayate ujjijirshuhu vitastambaha shuleneva trilochanaha. When Shiva struck the ground, Vitasta came. Similarly, when this king struck the ground, like Vitasta, water came, he says. Shuleneva trilochanaha. He was followed by another king called Kuvalayapida. He was a Raja Rishi. Right at the beginning he said, he was a Raja Rishi. He achieved self-realization. He joined Shivaloka. Then we have Jayapeda. It's a very interesting story. Jayapeda built temples for Shiva and Vishnu. He built a town called Jayapura. He re-established the practice of studying Mahabhashya, Patanjali's Mahabhashya. Now comes the interesting story. He somehow, like Kalhana has recorded in the case of some of the previous kings, he is going to record in future also. He developed somehow some enmity with Brahmanas, and Brahmanas became his enemies. And he became a cruel king. Very unfortunate. He became a cruel king. He started torturing Brahmanas. Once a group of Brahmanas came from a place called Tulamulya, now known as Tulamula. Tulamulya, that is the original Sanskrit name. Now, because they came for protesting, because he was torturing the Brahmanas, they came for protesting. So they came and told the king, what do you think of yourself? We are all like rishis in olden days. Like rishis, we can also curse you. Then the king started laughing. Oh, you will curse me. There was exchange of angry and insulting words. Vihasyovachatam raja vishwamitradi kopataha harishchandradiyo nashtaha tvayi kruddhetu kim bhavet. When Vishwamitra became angry, Harishchandra was put to severe torture. When you become angry, what is going to happen to me? You are not Vishwamitra, nor am I Harishchandra. Tvayi kruddhetu kim bhavet. Immediately that Brahmana said, he became very angry. He was shining with tejas. He said, Mayi kruddhe kshanadeva brahmadanda patenna kim. What do you think? If I become angry, Brahmadanda will fall on you in 1 second. Oh, is it so? Let it fall. Patatu brahmadandoso kimadhyapi vilambate. Why are you delaying? Kimadhyapi vilambate. Why are you delaying? Let the Brahmadanda fall, the king said. Immediately the Brahmadanda fell. What is Brahmadanda in this case? Nanvayam patito jalme tatha viprena bhashite. Let it fall, he said. Immediately. Rajnya kanakadandonge vitana skhalito patate. From the vitana, from the canopy, there was the golden bar, kanakadanda, which came and fell down on the king, and the king died within a few days. This is recorded. Very beautiful story. Then we go to Taranga 5. 4:30, yeah? 10 minutes later. Okay. Avantivarma, a great name. Avantivarma, a great name. Like we saw Lalitaditya, he established Avantipura, Avantishwara, Avantiswami. Great scholars adorned his assembly. His ministers are also praised by Kalhana. This Avantivarma had a siddha called Suya. He was like a civil engineer. No civil engineering had been done in Kashmir for a very long time, so the place was very bad in terms of agriculture. So this Suya, he established canal system, waterworks, etc., re-established. He did a very nice job. For that, Kalhana is all praise for him. He says, he is comparing him with Vishnu. He says, Vishnu took 4 avatars for 4 purposes, whereas Suya did all the 4 in 1 avatara. What are the 4? The reclamation of the land from water. That is what Varaha avatara did. This Suya did now. The bestowal of it to pious Brahmanas, having reclaimed the land, you give it to good people. That Parashurama did. Then building of barrages with stones in water, Rama did across the sea. And the suppression of Kaliya, Krishna, Kaliya Mardana. So that also he did. So he says all the 4 were did by Suya in 1 birth. He was followed by a king called Shankara Varma. He built Shankara Gaurisha temple. His wife built Sugandhesha temple. She was Sugandha. These are famous temples, Shankara Gaurisha and Sugandhesha temples. Ruins are still available today. Then we go to Taranga 6. There is a very good shloka in praise of Aparna, Parvati. Normally every Taranga starts with Ardhanarishwara shloka, but here it starts with shloka for in praise of Aparna as Parvati. Now Aparna was Parvati when she was doing penance to get Shiva. And she had stopped taking even leaves as food. That is why she was known as Aparna. We all know it from Shiva Purana. Now he says here, now what is so great about not taking leaves? Now serpent is not taking anything. Serpent is living on air. And the bull, Nandi, which is also taking only leaves. Now both Nandi and serpent are not part of Shiva. They are outside Shiva's room. Whereas Aparna became part of Shiva. So Aparna's, it's not just not taking leaves that is important. Her devotion, her bhakti is important. That is how Devas are praising her. So Aparna became very happy. That's how he, the poetic imagination, poetic fancy. Then we have King Yashaskara. His rule was so good that agriculturists never had to seek king's intervention. Each of his core team of administrators, ministers, judges, clerks were all learned scholars. He had a very ingenious way of resolving disputes. One beautiful illustration has been given by Kalhana. He says, one of the citizens was leaving his town. Before he left the town, he sold his property, he sold his house. Now, when he sold his house, in the sale deed, he wrote, Sopana Kopa Rahitam Griham Vikritam. That means the house has been sold without Sopana and without Kopa. That is, without staircase and without well. That's what he wrote. Now, and he made his wife to take charge of the Sopana and the Griha. He went out. After a few months, he came. He found his wife did not have either Sopana or Griha, no means of livelihood. She had turned into a beggar. Then he went and questioned the purchaser. He said, no, you have not left any Sopana or Kopa. They are all mine. This is the sale deed. And this issue went to the courts. And even at that time, courts were at several levels. At all the levels, this appeal was dismissed. Then finally it went to the king, King Yashaskara. You know what he did? Somehow he found the truth. Somehow, I don't know how. He found the truth. You know what the truth was? Sopana Kopa Rahitam Griham Vikritam. That was what was written in the sale deed. That Rahitam became Sahitam, Ra became Sa. But the court clerk who registered the sale deed, he became Ra into Sa. Kopana Rupa Sahitam Griham Vikritam. So I got the Sopana and Griha. What is wrong with that? Then this he found, he imprisoned him, he restored the property to him. A very interesting story. Ingenious way of resolving disputes. I wish such ingenious ways are adopted even today. Taranga 7. King Anantadeva was a good king. He gave many gifts to poor people, Brahmanas. Beautiful shloka, he says, even he fell on evil times. Every king falls on evil times in course of time. Many kings. Indriya Indrachandradya Hrepita ye Sura api aparimlana manatvam te martyas yathatava katham. Even Indra and Chandra are subject to Indriya sensations, emotions. So what about ordinary mortals, he says. Now next is the Vitasta river. Some of the views are shown there in the slide. About Vitasta, he says in passing, Kalhana says in passing, very beautiful shloka about Vitasta. Vitasta comes for mention very frequently, but this is a very rare mention here. He says, Vaitastena tu toyena jatharasthena ye mritaha moksham gachanti asandeham te yatha brahmavadinaha. Those who die with Vitasta water in their stomach, without doubt, they will attain to moksha, like Brahmavadis do. like Jnanis of Brahman do. This is what he says. So great is Vitasta. Then there was a king called Harsha. Harsha is a very famous king, very familiar to King Kalhana, because it was poet Kalhana. Because in poet Kalhana's father, Champaka, was a minister in Harsha's cabinet. But Harsha was full of contradictions. He was charitable and he was plundering. He was very munificent. At the same time, he used to kill people, but he was a great poet. He says, very difficult to understand this king. This shloka is a truism about life. Many truisms given out by. He says, boldness, presence of mind, dash, skill, strategy, freedom from confusion do not desert the minds of men of mighty intellect who are endowed with resoluteness in critical situations. This kind of morals, many morals are being given by Kalhana in many places. Then we go to Taranga 8. King Uchala, then followed by King Sushala. He says something about the impermanence of human life, etc. Then he says, there was one bhikshu, a chieftain, an army chief, who fought the wars. Now this bhikshu, how he fought the war? This is an example. Now the example is because the Shastra. Tata pravrityabhut gopta purav paschatya sarvada vishve deva iva shraddhe yuddhe bhikshur mahabhataha. That is, from this time onwards, the mighty warrior bhikshu became the protector in battle, in front as well as in rear, at all times, like Vishve Devas at the Shraddha. The example, look at the example. Now, we all invoke Vishve Devas in Shraddha. Apart from Pitrus, there is a person who is invoked as Vishve Devas. Why Vishve Devas are invoked? To protect the Shraddha. That is what he says. Like Vishve Devas protect Shraddha, this bhikshu was protecting the army in all sides. Now, Vitasta, because of the fight, instead of water, it became a river of fire, he says. River of fire. Aurushma Vedanat Klesham Viveda Saritam Prabhoho. Then comes King Jayasimha. River Paroshni is also mentioned, as we found earlier. Vitasta is a river which is mentioned right from Rigveda. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Agamarshana Sukta, they all mention Vitasta. Their river Paroshni is also mentioned, now known as Ravi. That is mentioned here. Then here he is also mentioning Sharada Devi once again. Paredyuhu Sharadam Drishtva Samprapto Garganandalaha Sankrandana Puri Paura Yodhair Vriddhim Hatair Vyadhat. That is, many people from Gauda Desha, from Bengal, came to Kashmir at that time, and they had a pretense, they had an excuse that they want to have a darshan of Sharada Devi. Under that excuse, they were coming to Kashmir, he says. Taranga 8 has got a lot of life's morals. We will not go into them because we have no time now. About King Jayasimha in Taranga 8, he says, Vitasta puline banalinge tena niveshite jayate surdhuni rodaha sampravrudha avimuktadhihi. On the banks of Vitasta, he established a Banalinga. Banalinga means brought from Narmada. That is why it is called Banalinga. And he gives an example. This brings to mind the Avimukta sanctuary towering high on the bank of the Ganga. That is Vishwanatha. Avimukta is Vishwanatha. Just as Vishwanatha is adorning on the banks of Ganga, the city of Kashi, this Banalinga is adorning the banks of Vitasta river in Kashmir, he says. He concludes Taranga 8 with a beautiful shloka. He says, now I have concluded 8 Tarangas. This is like Godavari with its 7 tributaries. Now, Godavari is not the Godavari we are familiar with. There was another Godavari in Kashmir. Now, he is referring to that. This is mentioned in Nilamata Purana also. Godavari Saridavot Tumulais Sarangaihi Vakrais Putam Sabati Saptabir Apatanti Shrikantaraja Vipulabi Janabdi Madhyam Vishrantaye Vishati Raja Taranganiyam. The impetuous Godavari in Kashmir, with 7 mouths, like 7 tarangas now, falls into the broad expanse of the ocean for final repose. Similarly, this river of kings, this Raja Tarangini, gathered to rest after the swift progress of 7 resonant waves, 7 tarangas, in the amplitude of the bosom of the illustrious Kantiraja's dynasty. Because Kantiraja was the king when he is closing the story in 1138 AD. Now, after this, we have the other Raja Taranginis, where also some kings have maintained the cultural, religious traditions of Kashmir, glorious traditions. In fact, one king, his name was Simhadeva, he established a temple of Nrisimha in Simha Lagna, and his guru was Simha, all Simha. So beautifully he is describing that. Then finally he is describing the Muslim kings. He is describing the destruction of temples, conversion of people, forcible conversion of people by Muslims. All that is being described by the subsequent Raja Taranginis. One Butshi Khan, idol breaker, Sultan Sikandar, how he ruined, destroyed all the temples, including the present Martanda temple, Avanti Varma temple, and so on, Avantishwara temple, and so on. So that, all that is described by the rest of the Raja Taranginis. I have taken perhaps a little more time than what was allotted to me, and I take this opportunity to once again extend my sincere thanks to the organizers for given me this opportunity. This book which I have written, where I have concentrated only on the cultural aspects, is being published by Kanchi Shankaramatham. Hopefully it will come soon. Then you can go through in greater detail, give you an opportunity to go through all this in greater detail. I seek your indulgence for having delivered this speech sitting, because I am just recovering from a serious sickness. Otherwise I would have done standing. I thank once again everyone for the patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Kalhana's masterpiece, Raja Tarangini, seems to be a very unique blend of authentic chronicle and imaginative poetry, inspired by the poet's passionate love for his very exquisite and beautiful homeland. So, in such a very short time, through your portrayal of Raja Tarangini, you brought in front of us the magnificence of Kashmir and its history. Thank you so much, sir. We offer our pranams to you. So, session 1 and 2 today saw tremendous outpour of abundant knowledge, talk after talk after talk. While it is going to be difficult to assimilate all of it in one day, let's try and digest whatever we can and come back to take in some more at sessions 3 and 4 that will happen tomorrow morning. Session 3 will commence at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow with Professor Beena Butki's talk on the culture of Kashmir, followed by Dr. J. Jagannathan's talk on Adi Shankaracharya from Kaladi to Kashmir. At 11 a.m., we will have Sri T.K.V. Rajan talk on why we should safeguard the Kashmir Valley. Session 3 ends with Sri Megh Kalyansundaram's talk on Bharata and Kashmira. After lunch, we'll continue with session 4, which will have Srimati Kala Nagaswamy talk on Kashmir through the eyes of Dr. R. Nagaswamy. Session 4 will conclude with the summing up of the sessions by Dr. Radha Bhaskar, Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan, and will be observed by Dr. Gayatri Kannan, Dr. Vijay Madhavan, and Dr. Sujata Mohan. This evening's program will have a Santoor performance by the very eminent Sri Abhay Sopodi and team, followed by Villapattu, our storytelling folk art form, on Vitasta Nadiyoram Kashmir Kalacharam by Srimati Bharati Tirumagan, who succeeds her legendary father, Sri Subbu Arumagam. And this evening's program will conclude with a lovely Bhan Pathir performance. So looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you. Dhanyavada.